Matt Rosendale here. I'm running for the United States Senate, and I'm running against the Washington establishment, against Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell. McConnell knows I won't follow his orders, and he's fixing to find out that the people of Montana won't follow his orders either by letting him pick our next senator. But they've made a big mistake. Montanans don't take orders from Washington. We send orders to Washington. So today, I'm asking for your support to run for the United States Senate, so together we can rebuild this great nation. Thank you, and may God bless each and every one of you.
This was not the video I wanted to make. This was actually supposed to be a video about MAGA Matt Rosendale and his bid for the Senate against Mitch McConnell's hand-picked RINO candidate. A breakdown of what would have been a primary proxy war in the battle over the future of the GOP. A proxy war we have unnecessarily lost. Unfortunately, the day that Matt announced his run, Trump endorsed the establishment candidate, and that led Rosendale to back out just days after his initial endorsement. It's pretty hard to run your campaign against Mitch McConnell's hand-picked stooge when Trump endorses the same guy, whatever his reasons were for doing so. Alas, another likely RINO is on his way to the Senate. So here we are. Today we're going to be talking about why the Senate GOP is such a train wreck and what has to be done to fix it. In the Senate, there are many Republicans that are really Democrats, but no Democrats that are really Republicans. Dan Bongino. It's so true. Senate Republicans are a mess. Our Senate is completely controlled by the Uniparty. While the lower chamber of Congress has several very solid members, most of which are organized through the House Freedom Caucus, the Senate is a much different story. In the Senate, we have J.D. Vance, we have Josh Hawley, Ron Johnson, Tommy Tuberville, Mike Lee, and Mike Braun, 6 senators who are truly solid on most of the issues. Then you have Ted Cruz and Rand Paul types, libertarian-leaning, better than most of their colleagues, but still far from perfect. Unfortunately, the vast majority of Senate Republicans are complete and utter RINOs. Well, RINO would mean they're Republicans in name only. While most of us know and use this term frequently, the truth is what these people actually are Republicans of a bygone era. An era of George Bush and John McCain, an America last, Wall Street establishment first era of the Republican Party. An era that remarkably ended for the vast majority of Republicans with the revolution of 2016 and the election of Donald J. Trump to the White House. But if it isn't clear yet, and it soon will be, things don't move so fast in the Senate. In the Senate, we have Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, John Thune, John Barrasso, John Cornyn, James Lankford, Lindsey Graham, and Lisa Murkowski, and over a dozen more lower-profile neocon Republicans who retain awful voting records completely detached from the wishes of the Republican voters which they represent. Senator John Cornyn, for example, a Republican senator from Texas, supports gun control. Senator Mitt Romney of Utah, one of the most socially conservative states in the country, voted to codify gay marriage and marched with BLM. Senator James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma, introduced the bipartisan border bill, a bill that basically legalized the southern border invasion and would have made it illegal for future presidents to take action to fix the border. A border bill that funded Ukraine's border security an amount 3 times greater than our own. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has called for the assassination of Vladimir Putin, the leader of the 3rd most powerful country on the earth, a man who commands the only nuclear arsenal larger than our own. He also routinely calls for the bombing of Iran, another likely nuclear power.
Hit Iran. We'll blow you off the friggin' map.
He really does not seem to care at all that war is not in the best interest for the people of South Carolina. In 2021, 7 GOP senators voted to convict President Trump during his second impeachment trial, while just this past month, 22 GOP senators voted to send Ukraine another $60 billion. They voted to end a filibuster led by the most conservative wing of our party. The question is, Why is the Republican Party in the Senate so out of touch with the Republican Party base? It's not a bug of the system, it's a feature. The House of Representatives, and to a lesser extent, the presidency, are institutions that favor more rapid change. 2-year terms in the House, 4-year terms in the White House, frequent chances for the people to hold their leaders accountable at the ballot box. The White House also has the ability to frequently switch out cabinet officials and change government policy simply through signing executive orders. Senators serve 6-year terms, and Supreme Court justices serve for life. It is hard to sway the Supreme Court, but it is even harder to truly sway the Senate. Changing out one of 9 Supreme Court justices from liberal to conservative will do a lot to transform the makeup of the court. But changing the Senate? That is a slow process. Each new senator is just a drop in the bucket. You could argue that this has worked to our advantage by preventing a massive wave of left-wing progressive senators during the Obama years. This mechanism has prevented a Senate full of Bernie bros, but has also done the same to stop the America First movement from taking control of the Republican Party in the Senate. Once these people get elected to the Senate, they have 6 years to build up their establishment war chest before the next election. If it's during a presidential year, they are likely overshadowed by the presidential race. And if it's during a midterm year, most people aren't paying attention to politics, so they get reelected with no challenge at all. On top of this, once you get in, as long as you haven't been a pain in the neck for the establishment leadership, the NRSC, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, funds your future re-election campaigns, including funds to protect you against a primary opponent with grassroots support. This is a system that truly hinders the voice of the people. Incumbent senators should not be working as one big team, pooling resources against all potential primary challengers. The grassroots of each state should have a voice in keeping their senators accountable. Now, before you say it, no, term limits are not the magic solution to this. In that scenario, the problem does not disappear, it just evolves. The NRSC would still continue to exert unjust influence over who is selected as the establishment replacement for outgoing senators. Not saying that term limits are a bad idea altogether, they just do not solve the problem of an out-of-touch Senate. If we want to build an effective movement in the Senate, America First senators first need to be elected, and then they need to wait there for reinforcements to arrive from the following cycles. We need people to build seniority to help get legislation passed and keep the movement moving forward. Before the 17th Amendment, senators were elected by state legislatures, not directly by the people. Some people say that repealing the 17th would solve all our issues, but I tend to disagree. The entire point of the old process was to insulate senators from rapidly changing public opinions. If anything, returning to the old system would completely prevent outsiders like J.D. Vance and Tommy Tuberville from getting elected to the Senate in the first place. It would always be someone who has connections to the state legislature. Repealing the 17th would also take a massive effort to push through another constitutional amendment, something that would be nearly impossible to do during our current political climate. However, here are some things we can do without the need for a constitutional amendment. Closed primaries. First things first, state parties need to move to make Senate primaries closed ballot. You should be a registered Republican in order to vote in a Republican Senate primary. It is partially because of Democrats voting in Republican primaries that deep red states where no Democrat can get elected statewide, states like South Carolina and Oklahoma, have such awful Senate delegations. Close the ballots and allow only Republicans to vote in Republican Senate primaries. Runoff elections. Another potential way to prevent awful incumbents from retaining power would be to move to a primary runoff system. Take Ohio's 2022 gubernatorial primary, for example. Not a Senate race, but still a statewide Republican primary. These people were pissed at Mike DeWine for being a total RINO, but they did not consolidate behind a single challenger. Renee C. got 28%, Blystone got 22%, and Stone got 2%. This left incumbent governor Mike DeWine with only 48% of the primary vote. He would have lost in a head-to-head. He very well could have lost in a runoff. This same concept can be applied to Senate races. State conventions. Some states choose their party's nominee through state party conventions. While this might make it harder for outsiders to get elected to the Senate without extensive party connections, it also leaves the nomination in the hands of Republican grassroots. This is not a bad option and is something that more states are moving towards. But here is the most interesting thing I have seen this cycle. The Nebraska Republican Party has endorsed Lieutenant Colonel Glenn J. Weaver for Senate against the incumbent RINO Senator, billionaire Pete Ricketts. Ricketts has never been elected to the Senate, but recently was appointed to finish out Ben Sasse's term. This makes him about as weak as an incumbent as you're gonna get. He did serve as governor beforehand, but his whole pathway to the Senate has stunk of corruption. If there is any primary to watch against an incumbent senator in 2024, it's this one. What the Nebraska GOP has done should be standard. We must not stand for the status quo, especially when that status quo sucks. We have a duty to take over state parties in deep red states and start doing this nationwide. There is no excuse for deep red states having total rhinos representing them in the Senate. Oklahoma is one of the most red states in the country. Why does it have Senator Amnesty Langford and Fight Me McMullen? Utah is supposedly one of the most socially conservative states in the country. How do you have pro-BLM, pro-war, pro-gay marriage Mitt Romney, one of 12 Republicans who voted to codify gay marriage into federal law, and one of 7 who voted to impeach President Donald Trump? John Barrasso in Wyoming, Mitch McConnell in Kentucky, Tom Tillis in North Carolina, Oklahoma, West Virginia, North Dakota, South Dakota. All the Republican senators are disasters. 2024 had so much potential to give us the America First wing of the Senate we so desperately need. Montana, Ohio, West Virginia are basically all guaranteed Senate seat flips, yet only Bernie Moreno in Ohio will bring that America First energy to the Senate. In the rest of the Rust Belt, the region of the country most primed for national populism, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Pennsylvania all had Senate seats up for grabs this cycle. Minnesota has always been a disaster. We have no bench, so we have no strong candidate there. But in Wisconsin, we almost had Tom Tiffany. He decided to sit this one out, a decision I will only respect if it is true that he is strategically waiting to run for governor in 2026. Wisconsin is in dire need of a competent right-wing executive to prevent the state from going off the cliff in the post-Trump era. But we should have been able to get a Senate candidate with some name recognition. I'm very worried about the Wisconsin Senate race. In Michigan, our top recruit was Sheriff James Craig, who just bowed out for no reason. I would have liked to see Perry Johnson run, and Trump should have recruited him personally to get him out of the Republican presidential primary. But he didn't. He ran, and then he dropped out and endorsed Trump and has gone silent. Right now, it's either Mega Rhino in Pete Meyer or Milquetoast Mike Rogers. There's still time for that to change, but it's doubtful. In Pennsylvania, you have the second run of Dave McCormick, another McConnell-backed neocon Republican. But this time, he's basically unopposed. He is basically guaranteed to lose to Bob Casey in November, so at least it will be the end of his political career. While it would have been risky, we could have put up Scott Perry for the Senate. With the full backing of the House Freedom Caucus and President Trump campaigning many times in the state, he could have crossed the finish line. But instead, we have a Republican candidate who could honestly be worse than the Democrat if he is elected. And the heartbreaker to top them all, Montana. We could have had Senator Matt Rosendale, the only person this cycle who truly had the potential to be a top 3 senator. One of the 20 courageous House Republicans who made McCarthy bend the knee in January of 2023, and one of the 8 who voted for his ouster last October. This is a man with a near-perfect voting record, and he's dropped out of the Senate race. And he may not even run for re-election to the House. He may just be retiring from politics. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he runs for re-election, or maybe gives us a miracle and we see him replace someone in 2026. But we'll have to wait and see. 2026 is our next chance. We cannot miss it. It is time for Kentucky to retire Mitch McConnell. for Texas to retire John Cornyn, and for Montana to retire Steve Daines. It is time for Louisiana to primary Bill Cassidy, West Virginia to primary Shelley Moore Capito, North Carolina to primary Tom Tillis, and South Carolina to primary Lindsey Graham. It's time for America First Republicans to flip Michigan, to flip Minnesota, and to flip back Georgia. That is potentially 10 seats that we could add to our column in 2026. If we work hard. That work must start now. We have 10 seats where we must recruit top-tier candidates. Candidates who will go to the Senate and stay there until we have an America First majority. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share the video with a friend. To hear all about Trump's 2024 America First agenda, you can click the video link now on screen. And if you want to hear more from me, please follow me on X at @TheRealSfez. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and God bless.
It's going to be only America First. America First.